Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show Live, entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. Jim Masters here in the host chair in the New York area, here in the United States. Welcome, everybody. It's so great to have you here. We appreciate you being with us. We also appreciate our next guest, a special guest joining us from the West Coast. Dean Butler is here, and we're very, very excited because he has a new, incredible memoir out. It's also the 50th anniversary as they continue the celebration of Little House on the Prairie. And he has so many stories to share, so many wonderful, heartwarming behind the scenes tales and stories. And a lot of your friends from Little House on the Prairie have been touring the country and making appearances and celebrating the beloved, iconic, and revered series Little House on the Prairie that ran on NBC, and to the delight of millions of fans around the world. This is an international love fest and following that Little House on the Prairie has. And it's really amazed the cast, the outpouring of support from fans and deep rooted, soulful followers who are loving what they are doing, which is really traveling around, celebrating and bringing back some of those amazing stories and tales of Little House on the Prairie, which again touched the hearts and minds of millions of people around the world. So the cast has been blown away by the response. I mean, when they've had events, they just had one in the springtime, and it was absolutely incredible. They even had to turn people away. It became so incredibly intense. The fanfare is extraordinary, and we're so happy to hear that. You guys know, who watch our show, that we've had several different members of the beloved series on our show. Karen Grassley has been here. Charlotte Stewart's been here a number of times. Alison Arngrim has graced us with her wit and wisdom several times as well. Of course, she was Nellie Olson, and she's got her book out as well. And it's always been a blast. So it's a real honor to welcome Dean to our show. And I just want to tell you a little about his incredible background. You know, in addition to being a phenomenal actor that you know from Little House on the Prairie and other shows and series, he is a brilliant screenwriter and producer as well. And he's worked on a lot of incredible shows and series. Faiery is one of them. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But even before all that, he was on one of the ABC After School specials too. Do you remember the ABC After School specials where Dean was on one of them? But of course, Little House on the Prairie, the beloved iconic series in NBC. Michael Landon, of course, his magic touch, the cast, the crew, so beautifully put together. The incredible instrumental theme written by David Rose of that fabulous David Rose Orchestra, just really, or performed by it, just really put the whole thing together in such a fantastic way. You know all the cast members, you know all the names, you know all the stories. I know many of you are so faithful following the tales of Little House on the Prairie. Well, of course, Dean played the iconic character of Almanzo Wilder, and of course, then initially marrying Laura Ingalls, marrying Melissa Gilbert, played that role, of course, lovingly as well. And there's a fantastic story about that and what it was like when she actually had her very first kiss, not only on TV, but overall, which is amazing. As I mentioned to you too, they've been celebrating with the 50th anniversary cast reunion and festival. They just had this. I'm going to talk about that. It was absolutely incredible. They're traveling the country and sharing the incredible story of Little House on the Prairie with all of the incredible super fans. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that they're doing. Let me tell you a little bit more about our very, very special guest. He wrote the book, Prairie Man, My Little House, Life and Beyond, where Dean shares the behind the scenes stories of Little House on the Prairie on a heartfelt journey of good luck, good television, and the very good, if gloriously imperfect, people who made it so. He was cast as Almanzo, Laura Ingalls, starring love interests, and Dean captured the enduring affection of fans and co-stars alike. In the book, there's a foreword by Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura, and Alison Arngrim, of course, who played Nellie. And an uplifting memoir is what it is, following Dean's journey from childhood to the prairie and beyond. He was cast at 22 years old, had no idea of the lasting impact of being cast in such an iconic series and what it would do to his life. And he previously had starred in Judy Blume's Forever with Stephanie Zimbalist. He was fresh-faced and naive, the Hollywood eager to make his mark, and he did, and found his home in the Prairie, and he embraced fellow cast members as family, and they embraced him as well. His passion for honest-to-goodness entertainment began in the Prairie and followed him through his rich career of acting, producing, and directing. And that's one thing everybody says about Dean, then and today, is he's authentic, he's real, he's soulful, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's one of the nicest guys in the industry, and to have survived the industry as well and all of its intricacies and craziness. And, he's just somebody that people love to work with and they love to chat with. And we are so honored to be doing that right now. If you want to comment in our chat room, you can certainly do that. That's open right now for everybody. Love the whole chat room. We thank you for being with us. And let's welcome our very special guest, Dean Butler, joining us here on the Jim Masters Show Live. Dean, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you, Jim. And what a wonderful introduction. And I'm here for the levity.
That's it. He got the memo, folks. He's here.
I'm here for the levity.
I tell you, Little House on the Prairie is certainly all about that, right? It's, again, an iconic series that you've had the wonderful honor to be a part of. And as I mentioned initially in the introduction, it must be very, very heartwarming for you and for the rest of the cast and everybody involved in the series to see this ongoing, relentless outpouring of support and love for you and everybody involved, to the point where, there's just lines of people waiting to see you guys, and they are really pouring their hearts out about the episodes. They can tell you the details of the episodes, who, what, when, where. It's got to be extraordinary for you guys right now.
I don't think any of us, I know, speaking personally, I don't think that I had any sense that we would be as connected to this now, as we were, for me, 45 years ago, for those who were there from the beginning, 50 years ago this year. Michael said to me when I was 25 years old, people will be watching and loving Little House long after we're all gone. At 25 years old, that felt like hyperbole. Now at 68 years old, it just seems like an absolute foregone conclusion that people will be watching and loving this program after we're all gone. And, what a spectacular legacy it is. It's the gift that keeps on giving, Jim. That's all I can say. There's just been nothing like this, nothing else like this in my life. And I've had some nice experiences, but to be attached to something that is as beloved as this is, on not only on a domestic level, but internationally as well. Little House is still airing in 140 countries around the world every day. It's in over 40 languages. It's just had this incredible life to it that is just amazing and affirming of so many good things about what it means to be human. And I think Little House captures all of that in a really, really nice way.
For you, growing up on a family ranch in Northern California, the idea of being a cowboy and riding horses began early for you, didn't it?
Yeah, I grew up on this family ranch that had been founded by my great-great-grandfather in 1885. And it's still in our family. And when I grew up there in the late 50s into the 60s and 70s, in those early years, there was no electricity, there was no running hot water. We ate at a big round table with a lazy Susan in the middle of it. We heated the water to do dishes at night on the stove. We played games from the light of coal oil lanterns, just the way people saw in Little House. We rode horses and did chores every day, and it was just really an idyllic way to grow up. And I couldn't have known then what value that all that life experience would have for me later on. And look, I didn't talk to Michael Landon or Susan Supin about this, and Susan Supin was our casting director. I didn't tell her these stories when I went in to speak to them, but somehow Susan, she picked up on qualities that were intrinsic to me that were totally shaped by this youth in the country, in a large multi-generational family where we lived and played together during the summers, and just had this complete departure from city life. And it really shaped me as a young person. It was a special, special way to grow up.
And that's one of the things I think that was recognized early by producers and casting directors and people in the busy, crazy world of Hollywood. They saw not only, of course, the wholesome look and the smile and the thick blonde hair and all of that. They saw a heart-centric person underneath, somebody who could convincingly play these characters, play these roles, and people will gravitate to you because of the authenticity. And that's one of the things that I think people love about that iconic series, but also the character you played and you as the person playing that character is the understanding of Dean's really a nice guy. He's authentic. He's affable. He's real. He's a good guy. He comes from, a good background. He wants to do the right thing. And it matched these characters, and in this case, Almanzo. And I think that was recognized early on in your youth, which is a fantastic thing. And you carry that out in such an eloquent and phenomenal way to this day in everything that you do, Dean.
Well, it's very nice, Jim. I think casting decisions are made in about, maybe not the final decision, but the initial casting decisions of this person could be right or they're probably not right. Those decisions are made in about 8 seconds. So you walk in the door and people either get it or they don't get it. And I was very fortunate that the people running Little House got it and got me. And as I say, it's been amazing to be attached to something that is so beloved by so many people across all kinds of cultural barriers, and age, gender, politics, all of it. People who love this show deeply love it because of its humanity. And it's an amazing gift. Jim, my dog is scratching at the door here, and
let him in. What's his name?
I'm trying to let him out. And in case you can go out and bark. You're getting a dose of family
reality
home here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to open the door. So excuse me.
Yes.
So, yes. Okay. I'm going to stand up here.
And before, he had to milk the cows, and run the horses in the yard too. Talk about authenticity, right? He's got to let the dog out.
Yeah. Yes, letting the dog out. Now, what we could get, Jim, is anything that goes by. He could be barking. He could be doing. I'm just looking out here to see. He's going to be getting into ferns and all kinds of things we don't want to get into. But it's just one of those things. This could be a little disjointed as I jump up and down to
which is cool.
What he's doing outside. So.
It makes it exciting, and it shows how we handle it live. I wanted to mention too that I know a lot of people, and we'll get back to, of course, the wonderful Little House on the Prairie. But on Broadway, you played Rapunzel's prince in the original company of Into the Woods. Right. Tell us about that. That's an honor, like on anything else.
Yeah, it was incredible. So I had done earlier in the year a tour in Japan of West Side Story, and I was hired to play Tony in this thing. And now this was a total shock to me. I mean, I'd been working at this, but this is another one of those places, Jim, where Little House it has an influence. in Japan, Little House is and was for years a massively popular television series and a massively popular series of books. Little House came to Japan following the Second World War. The U.S. State Department had one of Laura Ingalls Wilder's books, The Long Winter, translated into Japanese, and they distributed it widely around the country. Japan obviously was in ruins. It was devastated by the end of the Second World War. The Long Winter, the story of The Long Winter is about people who are overcoming enormous deprivation, and with their spirit and belief that it would work out okay, things do work out okay. And the U.S. State Department reasoned that the Japanese people would benefit from this message, and they got it. And that gave rise to just a passion for all things Laura Ingalls Wilder, which translated to the series. And when the producers of West Side Story were looking for someone to play Tony, I got pitched to them, and they did some research and realized that Little House was a nice launching pad from which to bring a Tony in. So that's how that happened. And then months later, after that tour was over, I got another call from my agent, and I never expected my career to go in that direction. I just wasn't. I was singing because I like to sing and all of that, but I just didn't expect that I would get that opportunity. So a couple of months later, I get a call from my wonderful agent, David Westberg, who says Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine are coming to town to audition for a replacement for Rapunzel's Prince. The show had been running for about a year. They were looking to replace this character, the actor playing the character. So I went down to the Music Center in Los Angeles and sang for Stephen and James Lapine and Paul Gemignani, the musical director, and Joanna Merlin, who was the casting director. And I sang 2 songs for them. I sang Agony and Hello, Little Girl, and had a nice conversation with them and read. And they hired me 2 hours later. And a week after that, I was on a plane flying to New York and finding a place to live. And
how rare is that, huh?
Theater.
Right.
Yeah. And being on Broadway, Jim, was just, it's an amazing thing. I mean, you can't realize the level of talent that you're around until you're actually in it doing these things with people. The life force of a Broadway cast is just like it light up the whole city. Mm-hmm. It's really, really, those people, when you're working in that environment, you're working and living on a different level. It's just there's a higher energy output, and you see it on the stage 8 times a week. And there's a wonderful tradition in the Broadway theater about just giving this full, rich performance every night. There are no off nights. The show does go on. When the curtain rises, there will be a show on the stage, and it will be great. And that's the commitment. And so to be a part of that and experience talent on that level was just, that was amazing. And you just, when you're in this thing, it's really a fascinating thing working on Broadway. I mean, it's a series of growth curves, and it's, you go up to a certain level, and then you have a little regrade, and then you rise up again, and you rise up again as you learn more and more about this thing that you're doing, and you're fully focused on it. And I just loved it was tiring, but it was a really interesting exercise in exploration and focus. When you're doing a show, that show doesn't change, and you're going to do that show 8 times a week, as opposed to a television series where, it's sort of like doing a television series is like taking a long run on the beach. You never touch the same sand twice. The water washes it away. It's always new. It's always different. Doing a show, and particularly, something like that, is like playing in a sandbox. You get to know every grain of sand very, very well, and you reshape it over and over and over again as you're working, and to bring this show to life for a new audience every night and give them an exceptional experience. And it is a wonderful craft and discipline to be a part of. I really, really loved it.
You also, I believe, wrote a regional theater production of Company with the one and only Carol Burnett, right? What was it like working with Carol Burnett on that, huh?
She was amazing, and thing that I was playing, Company is about, Bobby and three couples that he interacts with. So I was part of one of the three couples. I was not Bobby in that production. That not Sean Cassidy, but Patrick Cassidy played Bobby, and he was terrific in that. This is Shirley Jones' son. So he was terrific. But working with her, rehearsing with her, she was so accessible. She was so real all the time. She was this just very decent person, very funny. She knew what she was doing, clearly. I mean, she became famous in 1959 when she did Once Upon a Mattress on Broadway. That show was what brought me into the theater as a young man for the first time, following a girl I had a crush on into the theater in high school. And we were doing Once Upon a Mattress and joined the chorus. And, so here years later, I get the opportunity to work with Carol Burnett not in the show that made her famous, but in a show where she was playing an iconic part. That Joanna role in Company is just, that the Ladies Who Lunch that's a really wonderful song, and it opens the door to a terrific performance. She was just great. After doing that, she invited me, or her company invited. She was going to Broadway to do an evening of Stephen Sondheim songs, like a review of Stephen Sondheim songs, which would have been great. She offered me the chance to come and understudy that. And I don't know why I said no to that, except that I sort of felt like, I know how anxious I got knowing I was going on every night. That was like, I would work myself up to this, and like, it was really, I was focused. My days were built around being ready to go at 8:00 at night, or at 2:00 in the afternoon for a matinee, and at 8:00 at night after that. So you build your whole life around this. I came to feel like the anxiety level for me of not knowing if I was going to go on, and having to be ready, but never knowing until at the latest half an hour before the curtain goes up if you're going on. That's sort of like, the closest thing I can think of is a relief pitcher in baseball, where they don't know if they're going in the game, but they have to be ready to go in the game if they're in the rotation and they're up. And such respect for that kind of professional who can bring their absolute best stuff, do a rock solid performance, not knowing from day to day, hour to hour, if they're going to have to go on tonight and do that. I just didn't feel like I could handle that. So I had to say no I did turn that down, but I was so flattered that she asked me, because I really enjoyed, she was just a lovely person to work with in Company. Yeah. I was so flattered that she would think enough of that time we spent together to recommend me to her company. But, and I'm sorry I missed that, but it was like the best, I felt like it was the best decision for me that I could make at that point.
And as you made that decision, I don't doubt that she came up to you and said, "I'm so glad we had this time together."
And she said, yes, she said it to all of us. She was wonderful. She was wonderful.
I got a chance to meet her a couple of times, and everything you're saying is exact. No ego, warm, funny, affable, authentic. One of the favorites. Like a Dick Van Dyke too, the beloved Dick Van Dyke, somebody that's just like that,
Yeah.
funny and warm and approachable. And you've had opportunities to work with so many people over the years, not just on Little House, of course, which, is the thrust of the 50th anniversary and the book and all, but you also co-starred in the feature film Desert Hearts, played Moondoggie in the new Gidget, Buffy's dad, Hank Summers, on the Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well. People may remember you from those roles.
Yeah. The Desert Hearts situation is really an interesting one. I mean, this was, I had spent my career being the sort of the ideal man. I mean, that was sort of the archetypal thing that I was being hired to be. And this was an interesting opportunity where losing the girl to the girl was usually I was usually the guy who got the girl or was with the girl. Now I'm losing the girl to the girl. And I remember going into audition for that and going in to meet with the director. Her name was Donna Deitch, and was a documentarian going into that. And she's had a nice run as a director in television and so on. This was a very personal story for her. Desert Hearts is based on a novel by a woman named Jane Rule, set in the late 1950s in Reno, Nevada. So it's got all that atmospheric stuff. And this is where, where people came to get the quickie divorce, and so Helen Shaver, who's playing this sort of wrapped tight college professor, comes to Reno to get her quick divorce. And she runs into Kat, played by Patricia Charbonneau, wonderful Patricia Charbonneau, who was pregnant with her first child at the time she was making this. But she's just a force of nature kind of person, and very, it was a really powerfully intimate film. It was probably, at the time, it was considered the most graphic love scene between two women ever filmed. So these are two women that really invested themselves and stepped into this and did a really good job. But I remember going in to meet Donna Deitch, and no one was talking about what the scripts weren't available. No one was able to read this in advance. You were going in to meet her just to say hi so she could read your temperature about who you were and what you were. And I remember having the conversation with her. And this doesn't always, what I'm about to tell you has backfired on me in other situations. But in this situation, it ended up being perfect. I ended up asking her, after chatting with her, and she was lovely, she was funny and personable and all of that. She was great. I said, who's going to go see a movie about two lesbians? And she said, rather than throwing me out of the room, because this is what the movie was about, she said, that's a perfect attitude. Read with that. And so I read the scene that she gave me with that sort of disregard and discomfort with the whole idea of that. And she hired me the next morning. It was just one of those things where the attitude was the right vibe for what she was trying to achieve. Now, it didn't work out for me so well when I sat down with the great showrunner, Don Bellisario, who has, made so many, and he was auditioning for Airwolf that Jan Michael Vincent did with Ernest Borgnine. Mm. And I asked Don Bellisario, you just never know what occurs to you to ask some of these questions sometimes, but I did. I asked him, how many shows could you make about a helicopter? And he said, I have a few ideas. Thanks very much for coming in. That was the end of the meeting. Yeah. There was no reading. I mean, it was, so, we can be candid like that. And someone else might have laughed and said, I've got a few ideas, let's read.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But
he took it real serious.
Rosario was not someone who was going to be, I think he felt like he was being mocked or, something, or he had made that 8-second decision with me coming in the door saying, this is not the guy. Right. I mean, that's probably, I'm thinking that that's probably more what it was than my brazen question or my, sort of insensitive question. But, live by the sword, die by the sword. That was great for Donna Deitch. It blew me out of the room for Don Belisario. Oh, well, live and learn. You go in the room, you bring what you have, and that's that.
Exactly. You know who's somebody that did that, and you had an opportunity to be a part of this and several different roles, senior producer, the Emmy-nominated Faiery, the series on the Golf Channel, and about a very iconic individual. And of course, we'll get back to Little House on the Prairie in just a second, but just letting our viewers know that Dean's been involved in so many other incredible projects. Tell us about being involved in this and sort of telling this story.
I think David Faiery is a uniquely gifted communicator and a conduit to storytelling. David, anybody who knows David's story knows that he has lived a life of addiction and recovery from addiction, from whether it be alcohol or certain kinds of drugs. Or David has an addictive personality, and he was very, he was just, and he's Irish, he's Northern Irish. I mean, and look, it's maybe a cliche, but he was probably culturally predisposed to like adult beverages. And certainly his father was a big consumer of adult beverages, as David tells those stories. But when I met David, this was in May of 2011. We had gone, the wind up on this is I had been working with a wonderful executive producer named Keith Allo for a number of years. I had first worked with him in open wheel racing. He was the head of television for a group called Championship Auto Racing Teams, which was, competition between Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Honda, and Toyota in America's fastest open wheel racing series, most diverse. It was, ovals, road courses. It was really road courses and street courses. So this was really, really challenging racing in the US. So I had worked with Keith. I had been working with another company, met Keith. I was doing stuff for Toyota and Honda at that point, separate from racing. And we had a chance to meet at a race, and he called and offered me the opportunity to produce his weekly highlight show for ESPN about the series. So I, traveled the world with Keith for a year on a 22 race season, producing a weekly highlight show. And then he got a job at the Olympics, and he hired me to be the sort of the feature producer on 2 different Olympic Hall of Fame broadcasts where we're honoring great Olympians. And this was on NBC and USA television. When he left the Olympics for golf, and I had I wasn't a huge racing fan, but I got it. I loved the Olympics. I had no connection to golf. So when Keith went to golf, NBC Golf, it's like, well, that's going to be the end of the working with him because I just have no connection there. But in May of 2011, the phone rang in my office. I picked it up, and when Keith called, I always, I'm going to take that call and talk to him. And he just said, "How would you like to come and produce Faiery?" He said, "Well, Keith, what could possibly go wrong? I don't play golf. I've never produced a talk show. Sure. What have I got to lose?" I don't know what he had to lose at that point because he's executive producing this, but he trusted me, and he trusted my ability to tell stories and to work on a team. And I met David at TPC Sawgrass in Jacksonville a few days after agreeing to do the job. And David came in. It looked like he'd slept in his shirt for 3 days. Looked like he hadn't shaved in a week. His hair was like, David's hair is like like steel wool. I mean, thick hair. It's not curly, but it's thick hair. And it looked like he hadn't brushed it for days on end. And he was just he was clearly funny. I mean, you could see he was a really funny guy. But the thing that struck me about David, and I had come to know that he'd been on CBS for 25 years as one of their lead analysts. He had been a Ryder Cup competitor playing for the European side. He played on the European tour in the US during his playing career. But he was funny, but he didn't need to be the funniest guy in the room. He was the funniest guy in the room, clearly, but he didn't need to be. And that really impressed me about him. I thought, well, this guy's got a level of confidence, because I've been around funny people, people who have if their reputation is built around being funny, they have to prove it all the time. They've got to tell it's a joke, it's a story, it's something, and it's going all the time, running commentary. And if it's funny, it's really entertaining. But I didn't feel in David that there was this urgent need to be funny all the time. He could be serious. He could be thoughtful. He was, no question, he was funny. But so when you got into the shows with him, he could go to where the guest lived. So, if he had an outrageous guest, he could banter with that person and go tit for tat with everybody. I mean, I'll never forget the show we did with Larry David, which was really one of the funniest hours I've ever been. I mean, and really sort of like, Larry David's brand is misery, but he's funny in all that misery. And then we would do shows with people who had very deep personal stories. And David, while he could dance with Larry David on anything and loved it, he could also come to the guest's level, and he could have a really serious, heartfelt conversation, and you could feel David's empathy for the people he was talking to about whatever the topic was that they were talking about. He was very gifted that way. Wonderful writer. I mean, I learned so much about writing from David and being around him, and the simplicity and the clarity with which he could tell stories, and his willingness to strip away the adjectives and just stay with the story and not feel like he had to amplify it all the time. I thought that was really, really special. And then his ability to connect with an audience on stage was just exceptional. He could come out and say hello, and he could read the temperature of what was going on in the audience around him. And he had this gift to wait for them to come to him. He didn't need to go out and grab them. Some comedians feel like they need to go out and grab an audience by the throat and get them on their side. David would wait for the audience to come to him. And I thought that showed a great deal of discipline. There were a few times when maybe David felt like he had to work a little harder than maybe he instinctually would. Or for the most part, he would allow an audience to discover him. And I think that was the instincts of someone who would have been is a very shrewd performer. Really great performers allow the audience to discover what's being brought and come along. They don't have to go out and reach out, as I've suggested, grab you by the throat. And we did 10 years of shows together, over 150 hours of shows. We'd go out and so we were doing, nothing compared, you've done 1,200 shows, but, this is, the editing on these shows was pretty extensive. You could turn them in days if you had to, but generally they were weeks in the turning of the shows. You traveled all over the world to talk to these different guests because we went to them. They didn't come to us. We went to them. So if they were in Europe, if they were in Colorado, if they were in New Mexico, if they were in New York, if they were in Hawaii, if they were in Mexico, wherever it was, we went to them. And that was a really cool thing, to travel with this little circus that we brought with us of wonderful shooters and all the gear and all the stuff that you need to make something and shoot it nicely. We had a really great unit of people. It's probably immersively probably the most satisfying work I've ever done, because you start with a totally blank page. And at the end of whatever that process is, if it's a matter of days, weeks, or months, you have something at the end that you have had a hand in creating, and you've owned it from beginning to end. And that, for me, and that's, a lot of actors don't care about that. They're happy to come in, do the dialogue, and leave, do the scenes and go home. That was never quite as satisfying to me as I would have hoped. I really wanted to know, I wanted to be under the hood with the editor, with the producer, with the writer, and I really understand what was happening to make that show. And Faiery gave me that opportunity to do that on a weekly basis. That was just like, 10 years of nonstop immersion. And it was really, really satisfying.
I believe that, the screenwriting, the producing, that work that you do is really speaks deeply to your heart and soul. You are the actor as well, but that work where you are actually in the creation of it, there's just something about that goes to a deeper level. When you were on the various sets, I mean, even an ABC after school special, who didn't watch that? You had an opportunity to work with so many incredible people and to work with a lot of different crews and studios and so much more. Were you paying attention early to the process? Were you watching the camera people and, the lighting people, and just not only excited about it all, but immersed and taking notes early on, which helped you slide into the role of producer and screenwriter and all?
Yeah, I think all those things are helpful. A lot of actors don't want to know about the craft of the filmmaking. They just want to focus on what they're doing and allow the cinematographer to point them in the right direction. So you need to stand here and you're going to do this. And, they're happy to be in that position. I really did want to know what was driving these decisions and how this was being achieved, and what needed to be done in order to execute what a director wanted to do. And how would I'd like a director like, Michael Landon, absolutely the most, what he did week in and week out for 10 years on Little House was exceptional. He delivered a show on time, on budget, a show that was a ratings success, that touched people's hearts, that made them laugh and made them cry. And he did it over and over and over and over again. And then he went and did it. He had been doing it with a team of people that he brought with him from Bonanza. So he had that experience on Bonanza. He brought a lot of those people with him to Bonanza. And then he took the same group of people and made Highway to Heaven. And Michael knew, he understood that it took a very special group of people to execute his vision. One of the leaders of that execution was, and I'll be really surprised if you can pull up a picture of Kent McCrae, but Kent McCrae was Michael's producer, and Kent was Michael's secret weapon, because in Kent, he had someone who could meticulously organize and schedule production and he could hire exceptional crew, and he had an uncanny ability to identify people who really understood what they were doing, what needed to be done, and then he let them do it. He did not micromanage people. If he hired you, he trusted you, and until you failed to live up to that trust, he was leaving you alone to do what you did. And he engendered enormous loyalty. He and Michael together were, I mean, great people wanted to work with Michael and Kent because they knew they knew they were going to be respected, and they knew that they respected for what they did creatively, but they also knew that they were going to respect the time of a crew, that they wouldn't waste a crew's time, and that they would shoot efficiently so that you could get all of this material. You didn't have a picture of Kent McRae. There he is.
We're professionals around here, like you, Dean.
That is Kent McRae in his later years. Kent was just brilliant. I mean, and anybody who knows how, or who appreciates how good Michael was, and he really was, knows that right behind Michael, with support, intelligence, craft, was Kent McRae. And that pairing was exceptionally important in all the work Michael did in prime time. I mean, now Kent wasn't the producer of record on Bonanza, he was the production manager, but Kent had been doing this work since the days of live television. And when television went from live to being captured on film, Kent was right there in the middle of that transition to film and fully vested himself in understanding film. And film became very important in television because that was the birth of a rerun. That was the birth of being able to repurpose something that you had been created so it had an ongoing revenue stream. As opposed to live television, you did it, it was gone. It was like a play. You could charge advertising revenue for it, but until Kinescope, which wasn't a totally satisfying way of rerunning something, until videotape really got strong, film became the means by which things were rerun, and that became very profitable for the networks. And Kent understood film extremely well and hired great people to help Michael execute his visions. So watching those people, everybody in that world was expert at what they were doing. So I'm just watching, now I didn't have the capacity to turn that into, an episodic television directing career. I just didn't have that capacity at that time. I think I was so nervous about what I was doing as an actor to try and get that right that I wasn't comfortable enough to expand out. Michael had 14 years on Bonanza. And of course, Michael radiated confidence. I feel like Michael came out of the womb radiating confidence. I mean, it's just who he was. And he was voracious in his appetite to know and understand how to act in television, write television, and edit television. I mean, those are, if you can do that, if you can write and edit and direct, which he could do all of those things expertly, you have a nonstop e-ticket to go anywhere you want to go. And Michael showed that he could do that.
And television with a heart, too. Television with a soul. Television with depth and purpose, too, right?
Yeah, I think Michael knew that. I mean, look, and this is a lot's been written about this through the years. Michael grew up in a very unhappy home with two parents who really didn't like each other, didn't really want to talk to each other. So Michael was learning survival skills as a person very early on. And when he got the opportunity to act totally by accident, he'd gone to USC on a javelin scholarship he'd thrown out his arm after he'd been pinned down and people cut off his long hair, and he made him, he felt like he'd lost his strength and overthrew and ruined his arm and was thrown out of USC, or he lost his scholarship, and he was working in a warehouse. And an aspiring actor, of which they are everywhere in Los Angeles, an aspiring actor was working with him in the warehouse, and Michael wasn't thinking about acting at that time. But he needed a scene partner for a scene in the studio, and he asked Michael to read a scene with him. And they went to the studio and read this scene, and I don't know how the young guy did whose audition this was, but Michael blew them away. And it was a very emotional scene that required, or that led Michael to tears as he was performing this scene. And it astonished people. And that was the beginning. And Michael came out of that experience discovering something in himself, that he had this capacity to unload his emotional life, to share it in this very vulnerable way and very effectively. And that opened the door to this acting career, which started with I Was a Teenage Werewolf and all kinds of things before Bonanza happened. It was really Bonanza that was that was the magic thing for him. 14 years on Bonanza. During those 14 years, Michael learned about writing. He learned about directing. He learned about producing. And he was in this laboratory with really talented people, Kent McRae included, David Dortort, who was a wonderful executive producer, writer of Bonanza, great cinematographers, David Rose, who became Michael's go-to composer.
One of the best in the business, yeah. Yeah,
he learned all the pieces from these guys, and he carried it forward. And he was Michael could have probably had a big screen career if he'd wanted. I mean, Michael was a great looking man. The camera loved him. I think there was something about the workmanlike requirements of episodic television that really appealed to Michael. I think he had a work ethic. He wanted to work. He liked to work. He liked the pressure of that. And he liked the closure. It's like when you're going to shoot an episode of television, it's going to be 6 or 7 days, maybe 8 days if it's very complicated. Some shows went longer, some shows went shorter. But that's sort of the world that Michael was in, 6, 7, 8 days. And you are in that story all the way, and you're moving on to the next thing. And the day, you finish an episode and there's a new script waiting for you, and you're going to start shooting that new episode the next day. And that's how Michael cut his teeth. And he was very, very good at it. No one worked harder or smarter than Michael Landon.
Was he a perfectionist? Did he demand excellence and perfection? Yes. And let's get this right type thing?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what enabled him to do that, I mean, he wasn't going to. I never saw a moment's hesitation in his eyes. I never saw a moment's doubt with him. And if something, like if you're in a situation and the set that you're supposed to shoot on is not working, or there's rain, or there's something that makes it impossible for you to shoot that scene, or if an episode is short and you need to create another scene to add some time to fill that out, Michael just absolutely thrived in those situations. He always had plan A, but plan B was always just as good, if not better, than plan A. And he surrounded himself with people who could pivot on a dime and do that. I could be at home on a day if I wasn't shooting, and I could get a call at my apartment, my house later, and say, come in at 2:00 today. Michael's got a new scene. He needs to add something. And he'd come in and they'd hand you the pages. There was no way, we weren't faxing pages then. It was, you got to come in and you're going to get the scene, take a few minutes, learn the scene. We're going to shoot this in 20 minutes, and boom. and you just step into it. Those were really, really cool days, because everyone's flying by the seat of their pants. There's no pressure about what your rehearsal process was, because there was no rehearsal process. You're going to run it before you do it, but no one had time to really, fixate on something. You're just going to come in and do what you do. And he was great in that situation. And I loved those. And I didn't have a ton of those situations with him, but there were probably half a dozen times during the 5 years where you get that call and say, you're going to come in, we're going to shoot something right now. Boom, and you do it. And those scenes inevitably were always terrific because everyone was loose. There was no time to get nervous about it. You just do it. And I think a lot of great work happens when you can just put yourself in the space where we're just going to do this now. And you bring the best stuff you've got and you get it done. And Michael thrived in that way. And he gave everybody around him confidence that we could all do that. So he just made you believe that, yeah, this is going to be fine. We couldn't do this, but we're going to do this. And boom, go. And something fun is going to happen.
Which is really amazing on so many different levels. Such a iconic time too, to be learning, and again a series that just is still in the hearts and minds of so many. And your book, again, I know has been truly a labor of love. How long did it take to write this book, this memoir? And congratulations on it, Dean.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. So I had been toying with the idea of doing something like this since 2021 during the pandemic, because I was sort of the idea that the 50th anniversary was out there and it was visible. You could sort of see it coming. And I had read Melissa Gilbert's book and Alison Arngrim's book and Melissa Sue Anderson's book, and I had read Charlotte Stewart's book and Ketty Lester's book, and I thought, as we're heading into we're into 2022, heading towards 2023, sort of halfway through, I'm thinking, no men in our show have written a book. It's time for a man's perspective on this. And so I crafted a proposal. I didn't know I was going to shop it, but I'd been on an event with Mary McDonough, who was, I'm sure you talked to Mary,
sure.
From the Waltons. Mary's become quite a successful author now. And I was talking to her about this, and she said, send it to me. And so I did, and she read it. She said, I think this is terrific. She walked it into her. She sent it, emailed it, whatever, but she carried it in, put her reputation behind it, and took it to her editor at Kensington Book Publishers, and who is the editor-in-chief of the company, a guy named John Scagdamiglio, and he read it, and he called me the next day and made me an offer. Now, I had been told by an agent that I really respected, said, no one's gonna buy a book from you. I mean, it's just like, people aren't buying books. They don't care about actor memoirs, blah, 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 blah. And I had no reason to disbelieve him because, and so I did. And so when I got this call with this offer to write this book, when I got up off the floor, I said, well, this is it. I'm doing it. And we're going to make a deal and we're going to do this. So there goes the pupper. On January 10th, 2023, I got up at 5 a.m. and had a cup of coffee and sat down in front of my computer with my outline and started writing. And I finished the book and turned in the first draft on July 31st of 2023. So it was just about 7 months that it took to do it. But this was a 7-day-a-week, 5 a.m. deal when the house is quiet. And that's when I wrote the book largely, was during those pre-dawn hours. And I had a great time doing it. And it's sort of like, you're peeling back your life like an onion. and your memories are taking you to places that you hadn't necessarily thought about in years, but as you write one thing, it triggers something else, And, I think I knew in my outline that the general sense of where I was going to go. But as I started to drill down on each one of those story points, some wonderful memories came back to me, and it deepened it. And of course, a lot of things went away. I mean, my first draft was 220,000 words.
Mm.
And when my editor, who was following along, and this wasn't John, this was another editor who was following along behind me, tweaking things, that what we actually turned in was 96,000 words.
Wow.
So, a lot went away. And I'm so glad it did, frankly.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you don't want to get way in on these things too deeply, as it is. I think there's some topics in the book that are labored perhaps a little bit more than I maybe would have wanted to. But, as it comes out, that's the way it comes out.
Well, you share so much. I encourage everybody, whether you're a Little House on the Prairie fan or not, or you've become one tonight, whatever, or Dean Butler fan, or you just love really good, impactful writing and reading material. This one you got to add to your collection. I mean, you're very open and you're very real in the book. You talk about, of course, your well-behaved childhood, but, struggles with bullying, complicated relationship with dad, all connected to your deep passion for acting, right? So you're very open and real in the book.
Well, I thank you for that. And I hope that when people, if they do pick up the book and if they read it, my hope is, Jim, that what they will come away with at the end, the largest, I think, what I hope they get is a sense of my enormous gratitude for what has happened in my life. I've had hopefully I'm going to be around for a few more years, but I've had a really good things, disappointments, whatever, ups and downs of life. It's been a really good ride for me. And I am very grateful for it. And I hope people will detect that and come to that conclusion that I feel like I've been a fortunate guy. And I genuinely feel I've been very fortunate. So I hope people come away with that.
And you share that. Matter of fact, even these ancestral connections with parallels to the character of Almanzo, right? Which is unbelievable and ironic.
It's fun, it's fun. And I think I cover a lot of that in this, in this, what I shared with you earlier about growing up on the ranch and horseback riding and, family life by candlelight and coal oil lamps. And all of that stuff it gives you something that you don't necessarily even know what you're getting as you're getting it. But it shapes who you are. And for that reason, I feel like, I feel fortunate to have played any of these parts that I've had a chance to play, and work on the projects that I've had a chance to work on. But to be associated with something like Little House that has touched people for 5 decades and shows no signs of going away, and to be part of that, and to actually be a really central part of that in terms of who this character was and is in the Laura Ingalls Wilder lore, in her legacy story, to be that guy. That's a gift. There's just no way to be thankful enough for that gift. As I said,
there's Laura and Almanzo there, the real ones.
Yeah, there they are.
There's Laura and Almanzo.
There's Laura and Almanzo, yeah. And I think, this is like when they got married. She's like 17, 18, he's 28 years old. At that point, that's, they had this 10-year age difference. Melissa and I had an 8-year age difference as we're working together. I think, for them in their time, their age difference was a far more acceptable thing and understood thing than the age difference that Melissa and I shared at the time. And no one had ever cast anything like that before, that way, with that age separation in a young romantic couple, at least in series television, certainly in family series television. And no one's ever done anything like that since.
And that first kiss that everybody still remembers too, huh? Iconic.
Yeah.
I think that kiss probably had ratings equivalent to the birth of little Ricky on I Love Lucy.
I don't know if it was that big, but I know it was. I mean, I know that we were like, the number 2 show of the week. And at that point, Dallas was always sort of the number 1 show.
Oh, yeah.
So we were number 2 that week. The thing that really, that particular episode, the Sweet 16 episode, which was a really transformational episode in the life of the series. And this picture is not from that. This is a kiss that happened later.
Right.
But a kiss is, a
kiss is a kiss.
But it was a special kiss.
Yeah.
That episode, Sweet 16, reran. It had its network premiere. It had its summer rerun, and it was rerun in prime time one other time that year. That was a very unusual thing for a single episode to get 3 primetime airings in its premiere year. That was pretty cool. That said to me, that certainly the network loved the number of people that were tuning in for that. Sponsors obviously liked it. It was great for the show. That was really cool to be a part of that kind of a response.
Do you ever? I know some of the viewers, they've all been saying hello. They're all getting the book. They're very proactive here. They're ordering the book already, which is fantastic. How much of Almanzo is Dean and Dean Almanzo? One of the viewers asked that question.
Yeah. I am he and he is me.
I like that answer.
I am, there is no, actors love talking about, sort of going into their imaginations and pulling characters out of thin air. I just don't believe that. I mean, certainly not in series television. I just don't. I mean, maybe there is, and I don't want to say it never happens that way. But on television, week to week, it really is helpful, and I think the most effective, when actors are playing close to who they are. I mean, that's, your casting directors, it's not like, in high school or college where, you'll cast somebody to play a character that they could never play in the professional world because they're capable. They have facility. They can be, they're 19 years old, but they can play an old man. I mean, okay. At 19, you're going to get a shot to do that when you're in college. In the professional world, you will never be a 19-year-old guy playing an old man. It's just not going to happen. You will wait for the old man to walk in the room, and you're going to hire the old man. So in the case of, playing this guy or any man or woman, casting directors are going to wait for that person who walks in the door with a certain set of qualities that feel right to them as being in sync with what the vision of this character is, or that actor comes in and crystallizes in their mind who this guy or girl is that they're hiring. But they will wait. They will see as many people as it takes to get that feeling so that they feel confident that this is the person. And it's just a matter of how long they're willing to wait, because that person will walk in the door. There is a vast pool of talent in our country, certainly in Los Angeles at any given time. There are a lot of options. It's just a question of how many actors they're going to see, and that person will be there eventually. I'm very fortunate that I was that person.
You were that person. It was absolutely perfection casting. and you took the role and you ran with it, and it enhanced the addition of the character, enhanced things and sort of solidified the story in many different ways. And getting a chance to work with, Alison Arngrim and Karen Grassley and Melissa Gilbert and Melissa Sue Anderson. I mean, all of these people, it was fantastic. And you still stay in touch. Of course, this fantastic reunion that happened just blew the doors off everything, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. We did this, and I was not involved in the initial planning of this. The dream of this event hatched with Rachel Greenbush and her husband Danny, and an artist named Orlando De La Paz, and a cinematographer named Steve Howell. And they were the initial ones who had, and Alison Arngrim was there too, interestingly enough. And this is where they gave birth to the initial idea. And then they reached out and found the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce recognized this as an opportunity, because given that the show was shot in Simi Valley, that Big Sky Movie Ranch was the home of Little House. Big Sky Movie Ranch is in Simi Valley. It's an iconic shooting location. The Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce decided to get behind this event. And I came into it sort of, I think, late 22, early 23, something like that. And I think I helped provide a conduit between the Chamber of Commerce and the committee that was sort of driving the creative organization of this, the creative vision of this. And I helped make, and I think this was my producer hat on, and this was a lot of moving parts with this, but I helped bring some reality to the cost of this, the cost and the vision, and what could be done for, and how much money was going to get spent to do this. Well, the results were just thrilling. On those 3 days, in March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, we had over 18,000 people in Simi Valley, California for this event from 27 countries. And this committee, with the support of the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce, who wrote all the checks for this, they did it because they believed in the idea. And they could see that if they could get the word out, that people would come. Well, we sold over $1 million worth of tickets for this. It was the event, and the event cost close to $1 million to put on. This was not a profit-making venture. This was dollars in, dollars out to get a result. And it was a constantly moving bar because the revenue was growing. And, so you start spending based on what you've got in the bank from the ticket sales. And as the money keeps growing, you're able to keep spending money. And at some point you have to decide, where are we stopping? And that's a very tricky balance to find. I think we did, all things considered, with so much involved, so many moving parts, so many people and constituencies involved. It was just an incredibly joyous weekend with fans and cast and people who loved the program. You could walk everywhere that weekend and look into people's eyes, and you just saw joy. You saw that you were with, as cast members, we knew that we were surrounded by people who unabashedly loved this program. And they could see in all of us that we unabashedly loved what we had done on the program. It was a love fest. It really, truly was a love fest of passion and belief and commitment to this vision. So much of we owe all of this to Michael Landon, because it started with a man named Ed Friendly, who found the books, his daughter Brooke reading the Little House books. Ed was one of the producers of Laugh-In. He was one of Of course,
Legendary guy, television guy. Yeah.
yeah. So, but when he read the book, and I'm not sure which one of the books he read, that's not quite clear which one he read, but he saw immediately that this could be a television series. And so he commissioned the writing of the script, and then ultimately hired Blanche and Alice to write the pilot that was going to work. And then when reaction to the script was lukewarm, because the networks were all moving away from Westerns, this was the violence of Westerns was, Little House wasn't violent, but the whole genre of Westerns and Little House sort of fit into that. There was not a huge appetite for this initially, but when Michael Landon read it after Ed sent his daughter Brooke up to Tower Road in Beverly Hills, they were neighbors in Beverly Hills. Michael read the script on a Sunday morning and called Ed on the phone and said, "I want to come down and talk to you." Ed wanted Michael to direct the pilot. That was because he'd seen an episode of The Wish, or the Bonanza called The Wish, that Michael had directed, that he and his wife Natalie had loved. Michael came down to the house. They sat at Ed's house. Michael said, "Not only do I want to direct this, I want to star in this. I want to be Charles Ingalls." Well, that matched up. Bonanza had just been canceled, or had recently been canceled. Michael had a pay-or-play deal at NBC, where they were, if they could find something that they all agreed on, they would make it. If they didn't find something they agreed on, the network was going to go owe Michael a pile of money. So, even if the network wasn't jumping up and down about this idea, I think that initially what they recognized is they were going, because they knew Michael as a director, and they knew Michael wasn't they knew he would deliver ratings. They knew at the very least they were going to get a really good movie of the week that would be starring one of their most iconic, beloved stars that they would have in their inventory for years, that they could take out at holidays or wherever it was that they wanted to use this. What they hadn't counted on is that not only did the show get absolutely monstrous ratings when it premiered months after it had been made, but it tested through the roof with audiences who reacted just like fell over themselves, telling NBC how much they loved this. So after the show aired in March of 1974, the network picked it up 7 days later, and they bought 22 episodes. They committed to 22. And so then Michael and Kent McRae and Ed Friendly had like 6 months to invent this whole world of the series and have it ready to go in September. And it premiered on September 11th of 1974. And since that premiere, Little House has never been off the air in the United States. And as I said earlier in the conversation, it bears repeating, the show still airs in 140 countries around the world every day in 40 languages. It is the definition of enduring. And we're not, Little House is not alone in that category. There are certainly shows, I Love Lucy's in that category. Star Trek is in that category. There are those, but there are not many of those shows, and they are iconic in their appeal. Gilligan's Island, for this quirky half-hour comedy, is in that category of shows that have survived through the years. Leave It to Beaver is in that category.
Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie.
Bewitched. Yeah. Well, Bewitched, that's Harry Ackerman, who was the creator of Gidget, who was the executive producer of Gidget. We haven't even talked about Gidget, and we've gone an hour, almost an hour and a half. But so we'll have to do this again. But Harry
welcome.
Ackerman is a story unto himself. He was an incredible gentleman, and he had a wonderful vision about television, particularly television comedy. And I just had a magic touch. At one point in time in Harry Ackerman's career, he had 7 shows on the air at the same time. That is an extraordinary achievement I mean, obviously had great people around him who were doing these, but Harry was the EP of 7 shows at one point on the air. Just an incredible thing. And what a lovely, lovely man he was.
It's like William Asher, who was involved in so many of the shows as well. Bill Asher.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were probably yes.
We worked together. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about the Little House on the Prairie specifically that still resonates with everybody all these 50 plus years later? I know that during the pandemic, people were going back to watching and watching things that made them feel good and safe and comfortable and warm and connected and familial. That enhances it. But for it to last this long and people to have, the outpouring of support, thousands of people, lining through velvet ropes, trying to get in to see you guys. What do you think that is? What is the gel of the whole thing that keeps people craving it all these years later and responding to all of you in such a beautiful way?
I think that Little House touches, for audiences who find it and love it, something essential about being human. And it's family, it's community, it's love, it's acceptance, it's forgiveness, it's overcoming disappointment and hardship with grace and decency. It's very aspirational in that way. And Michael's storytelling was very simple. There was, you knew who you were rooting for, and you knew who the bad guy was. And I think this is part of the tradition that he came out of. And it's simple. I mean, in some sense, it's simple. It doesn't have the kind of nuance that a lot of dramas have today, where good is maybe good, maybe not good. Michael was crystal clear about what was good and what was not good. And I think that the clear illustrations of good and maybe not good were an opportunity to teach about behavior and about aspirational behavior. What do I want to make of my life? What do I want? What's the best choice here? How am I going to be the best person and that I can be? And I think Michael gave people that. He also gave people, and this is a huge thing with Little House, Jim, is that there were a lot of people who grew up in unhappy homes. There are people everywhere who have grown up in very challenging circumstances. Little House was a safe space for millions and millions of people who could, when lacking it in their own family environment, could attach themselves to the Ingalls and say, they're my family. This is my family. And they could tune in, join that family once a week on television, and know they were being taken into a loving, nurturing environment. And they could laugh with the Ingalls and cry with the Ingalls and root for the Ingalls and believe in, there's something about, and it's hard to explain it, but when you're watching something, I mean, when you cry at Little House, it's not always tears of sadness. There's a lot of tears of joy in Little House that people cry. And I think the joy comes from it's cathartic. You recognize on a human level, on a fundamental human level, you recognize goodness. You recognize what's right. It's a tingling that you get. I mean, in religious terms, that you could say it's the Holy Spirit. And I'm not a religious person as I say that to you, but I understand something of what that is. Little House engenders or triggers for people, and triggering in a positive sense, triggers emotional connection to what is essential and good about being a human being. And he does that through the Ingalls family. Michael did that using the Ingalls family predominantly as the carriers of that good message. And he gave the audience the Olsen family in Walnut Grove, and there were other sort of villains or less admirable people. But predominantly, he gave the audience the Olsen family as an example of how not to be. And as an example of behavior that maybe wasn't totally admirable. Now, and they always, what was cool about this is that it's not that you disliked the Olsens. You did like, he made the Olsens, all these actors made these characters very likable and interesting characters. But you also could count on the fact that if there was going to be something underhanded or manipulative or less than admirable, they were going to do it.
They were going to be the ones, yeah.
You just knew they were going to do it. And you looked forward to that. And when at the end of that, they got what was coming to them. And yet they were always forgiven. And you could start off again next week because there is the grace of forgiveness. And they could start off next week and be just as reprehensible or as devious or as maddeningly whatever they were as they were, and you would accept it over and over again because they taught us, as the Ingalls were teaching us goodness, the Olsens were teaching us how not to be. And that's a very powerful lesson too, because you could see that this didn't really work out well for them. It was fun to watch. It was always fun to watch. And this is where you've got these wonderfully talented people playing these characters. But they gave everybody a lesson in maybe behavior that should be avoided.
Well, we had Alison Arngrim on. She talked about how sometimes people would, see her in the supermarket or store, airport, and they'd come up to her and they would say these things as if she's still Nellie. She said, wait, I'm just playing the character. I'm not Nellie.
And what she did was she took it as a compliment. She said, I'm obviously doing my job well.
I'm doing my job well. Exactly.
I'm obviously doing a good job here. People are getting what I'm doing. And I think Nellie Olsen was the great surprise. I mean, talking about Alison, Nellie Olsen was the great gift of Alison's life.
Yeah.
And she has invested in this totally. And
yes,
so much fun carrying that Nellie energy forward through her life. And along with that, Alison is a seriously powerful force for good around her. She had fun being a villain, but Alison has a very rich, good, decent heart. And Alison is continually attaching herself to things that are for the good of people and committing to to goodness. So she's the prairie bitch on television.
Right.
But when she's not that, she is really one of the good people you will ever meet.
And how could she not be, with her mother being the voice of Gumby, Davy from Davy and Goliath, and Casper the Friendly Ghost?
I know.
Incredible.
I know. I mean, she has such a deep history in all of this.
Yeah.
It's just she gets it in a way that very few people. I mean, she gets this business.
Yeah.
In a way that very few people I've ever known really get. And she has a wonderful sense of humor about it. I mean, you can't talk Alison and not laugh.
Quick. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So she gets it. She looks for the humor.
Yeah.
She has a very quick wit about
humor. Love chatting with her.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to let folks know that, of course, Dean is very active on social media, especially Instagram. There is the official Dean Butler handle and his website as well. We've been showing it throughout the broadcast. And of course, that is the name of the book. You can get it, of course, Barnes & Noble and Amazon, where books are sold. Here is the book. It's a great cover to it as well. And it's a great read. And there's a lot more. We just really scratched the surface, as Dean was saying. He talks about the love story of him and his lovely wife, Catherine, very, very beautifully in this, and so much more. There's a lot of other little nuggets that he talks about in here that we didn't want to give it all away. We just wanted to talk a little bit about various things, but it's all in the book, folks. Now, having accomplished this, did you enjoy the process? Do you see another book in the offing?
Well, I totally love the process of doing this. And, you know, I think we'll find out beginning on June 25th if there would be an appetite for something more on both sides of this.
The 24th is the big release. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. And I've got a topic in mind that would be, you know, have some biographical elements to it, but maybe more a different kind of a story. It would not be, I don't see myself writing any kind of novel. That's not, it would be an examination of something. And I think that would be fun to do, you know, so we'll see. It's good. It's all going to be up to the readers.
It's going to be up to the readers, folks. So get out there, gang.
So there's not only, so we've got the hardcover book, there will be an ebook that comes out, and also the audio book, which I recorded a couple of weeks ago.
You recorded, which people love that when they hear the author do the narrative. Absolutely. There's the book, folks. We are so honored and excited, and we've wanted Dean to join us for a while, and I'm glad that it all worked out. And we're definitely going to have you back, my friend. This was terrific. He's the producer and screenwriter.
And that's in Ireland. We're doing an interview that day with Rory McIlroy.
That's cool. I didn't want to forget to show that side of you too, that you absolutely love, the producer and screenwriter as well as the actor as well. Tremendous conversation, Dean. Congratulations on everything. Of course, happy 50th, as we've been saying to all the other guests from Little House. Job well done. Beautiful book, beautiful heartwarming memoir. We wish you continued success, big success with that. And as we say, and this sounds very Little House, but I've been saying it since we launched this, we will keep the porch light on for you. And you are welcome back anytime, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, keep that coal oil in that lamp. Keep that wick trimmed. And yes, we'll find each other again.
You are the absolute best. You truly are a class act. You really are a authentic, affable guy. And when I told people that you were coming on the show, they're like, oh my God. And people in the industry too that I know, they're like, oh my God, he's one of the sweetest, nicest guys in this industry. He survived it all. And he's just a regular guy, one of the good guys. He works hard. And hopefully our viewers just got a little behind the scenes taste of Dean, not only the image, the guy, the gentleman, and that's what you definitely are, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure visiting with you.
And all the lovities who are sending you all their love and all the great comments. And thank you very much. Did you say the dog's name is?
Oh, Benny.
Benny, you are
absolutely bonkers outside.
I was going to say, Benny, have to give him a big bone or something.
Yeah. He's ready for his dinner right now is what it is. So I need to, before he
next time
the garden up, I need to go feed him.
Next time we'll have Benny on as the guest. Okay. Give Benny the time. Dean, you be well, my friend.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks for all the great time. Isn't he incredible? A really, really nice guy, very generous with his time. Benny is barking. He's got to get out there. It's time for Benny to eat. You guys have been commenting about Benny. Bring Benny on the screen. Benny was outside having some fun, hopefully not eating the ferns and other things in the garden. But Benny is a trooper, and we haven't seen Benny yet, but we love Benny already. Hey, what did you think? Wasn't that fantastic? We always have not interviews here on our show, as they call them. These are conversations. And here we brought on a television icon, a film icon, somebody who obviously is not only very astute about the industry, but is very passionate about it and the relationships and the people. And if you noticed, if you listen closely, he paid respect to so many others in the industry, so many other people that he's worked with, that he's been mentored by, inspired by. It wasn't just Dean just talking about Dean. It was Dean sharing his experience, his life, his choices in life, things that he's accomplished and wonderful projects he's been a part of and what that's meant to him. But also he's tipped the hat to so many other people. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about somebody like Dean, because not everybody does that. They always shine the light on themselves, and that's where it ends. Dean has never been like that. And I think that's why so many people, look for Dean. They want to hear from Dean. They appreciate Dean. And again, when he came on that series and popped on as, a regular, it did solidify things in the story in such a fabulous way. And we just scratched the surface, folks, as Dean was teasing a little bit, which was so perfectly said. He's got a great sense of humor, too. We didn't even get to Gidget. I'll have to come back. Absolutely. As I just mentioned that he was involved with the new Gidget, but there's a whole story with that as well. He is terrific, I tell you. We also had Wendy Lou Lee. Remember, Wendy Lou Lee was here, too. She played Baby Grace. See that episode. Karen Grassley's been here. Alison Arngrim's been here several times. Charlotte Stewart's been here as well. Dean Butler now here. And if you get a chance to go online and search for the city nearest you, there is a tour that's happening. The 50th anniversary continues, and it's going to be exciting. And wherever they go, I know that with some of the venues that were the original venues where they were going to be doing, the event, couple of day event, they've actually had to move to larger events. There's one in Connecticut, in the capital city of Hartford. They were going to be doing it, I believe, at a smaller theater in Torrington, Connecticut. This has grown so large, they're doing it now at the Connecticut Convention Center, late August, early September. And there's breakfasts with them and dinner with them and all kinds of really cool things. So that's going to be great. And, when they did this in Simi Valley, they had the filming location tour, the sets. They really recreated it. It was something very, very special. And you know who they're all doing it for? Who Dean is doing it for? And Melissa and Alison and all of them are doing it for you. This is a blessing for them. They're reliving the days of being on this television series. And they were all, younger actors at that time and actresses. And to see the fanfare that still exists, they're doing it for all of you because they know how much it means to you. And I think that's a fantastic thing. Dean spent all this time with us doing it for me, which I really am honored by, and doing it for you, which I think is a beautiful thing. So get out there and get that book, folks. You're going to want it. It's going to be out on the 24th of this month. So we're giving you a little preview there, a little teaser. We didn't want to tell you everything, so you have a page turning to do. And deanbutler.com is his website. Some really fantastic observations of why Little House on the Prairie is such a beloved series as well. So, gang, we thank Dean for joining us here on the show. We thank all of you for joining us here on the show as well. Dean's got to let the dog out. Dean, thank you very much, my friend. You are absolutely the best. He sent me a little private note here. Dean, I appreciate that. You will be back. And yes, let's do it all again. We'll have you back real soon. And great comments. Thanks, Dean. The dog is barking away. This is really fantastic. You guys are great. When I'm on the show, we can chat actually with the guests. He said, thank you, Jim. We'll do it again on June 25th. That's fantastic. And be well. Benny is hungry. Benny's the dog that was barking. Benny's hungry. Benny's a trooper, I tell you. That's what we do here. We have conversations. We don't rush our guests, and they can stay on as long as they want. And Dean is a fabulous conversationalist, and we had an exclusive conversation here. I was into it as much as I know you were. Fan of the series. I work in television and broadcast media, radio, and all the rest in film. So I love when we bring on the television folks, from our favorite TV series and shows and people behind the scenes in TV and some of your favorite child stars and producers. And I mean, I love all the genres. We have so many, we talk about so many things on this show about life, all these different guests and all these different genres, but I'm especially in tune with the TV folk working in the industry myself. And again, Dean is an iconic figure as a not only actor, but again, producer and screenwriter of so many other shows and specials. Wonderful comments he said about his respect for Michael Landon, who was really a dream maker on so many different occasions with the series. And of course, then going on to Highway to Heaven, which was another hit series on NBC. Talked about his work on Faiery, which was really another thing that he was very, very, he really loved doing. And you can hear it when he was describing what it was like and all the travel and everything they had to do. It was just something that really was near and dear to his heart. And this is the original Laura Ingalls Wilder, the one that the character, is based on in the series. Right there on the left, that is her. And there is the original Almanzo Wilder, the character that he played, Dean Butler played on Little House on the Prairie. There are the original people, which is amazing. And there, of course, is Dean Butler and Melissa Gilbert playing those characters. Of course, all originally coming from the books as well. This was really great. Going down memory lane. This was really a feel-good episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series. Again, Dean's book gets into some really interesting topics. He's very raw and open and honest, and he is just very, very real in the book, which I think is fantastic. Dean Butler, Prairie Man, My Little House, Life and Beyond, with the foreword by Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim. Melissa, of course, played Laura Ingalls Wilder, and of course, Alison Arngrim. Well, Alison was nasty Nellie Olson. But we love Alison. But on the series, she was incredible. And matter of fact, she has her book. We talked about it, and it's still out and available and very popular. Surviving Nellie Olson: Confessions of a Prairie Bitch. It's the title of her book, and it's a good one. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad that you enjoyed this episode. We have so many more guests and episodes coming up. Kathleen Walker in New York City, she did a very Irish green and very nice super chat there. Hey, Kathleen, thank you. We appreciate that. Our JMS Levity viewer extraordinaire in Queens, New York City. She says, loving this conversation. Thanks, Jim and Dean. Good luck with the book. Can't wait to get it. Thank you, Dean, for being here. Such fun. Thank you. Thank you very much as well. And Jane wanted to see the dog, Benny, but Benny was outside. So if he went to get the dog, he'd have to get up and leave the chair. And he didn't want to do that because we were having the conversation. He did it in the beginning. He had to let the dog out. You may remember if you watched in the early part of the show, he let Benny out. But then he was keeping an eye on Benny because Benny has a tendency to dig up the garden, eat the ferns, chew on the flowers, and he doesn't want his rutabagas destroyed in the backyard there. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, Dean. It has been a blast hearing your stories, continued success in all you do. Thank you very much. Maureen saying that as well, and everybody watching, and we really, really appreciate this. And Jen Barry's in Allentown, Pennsylvania area. She says, I'm so thankful to Jim and his show and guests and lovities here. You always have a safe, fun home to come home to when life gets busy. Thanks, Jim. My pleasure. You sure do. And it's always a good place to come. And this is great, too. You got Alison's book, Alison Arngrim's book, after she was on our show. It is a great book. Absolutely. We love this. And no, Leo's watching. Not Elton John's Benny. Isn't that Bernie? This is Benny is Dean Butler's dog. Benny Butler. Awesome show and guest. Thank you, Jim. And nice little chat here with our lovely viewers who have been watching. Sherry Larson says, thank you, Jim, for another fantastic show. The pleasure is all mine. We really have a hoot, holler, and a great time putting the series episodes together for all of you. And you're looking forward to tomorrow. Fantastic. Got another great guest coming up tomorrow as well. Maureen says, masterful conversation. Thanks so much for having Dean in Lovely Hall. Hope he keeps an eye out for the porch light. He loved the porch light line. I say it to all the guests, and he's going to be back. We will definitely have him back. He already said he wants to come back, which I think is a beautiful thing. He's really a nice guy. And you said he's a lovety. He already said in the beginning of the show, he loves being a lovety. And he really is. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Works hard. Great family. Thanks for being here tonight. I will tell my partner to find the book. Thank you, Jim. Great show. Yes, it's going to be coming out in later June. So make sure you look for it. It's not out yet, but you can pre-order. You can do pre-orders. And I think it's one of the hottest pre-orders in a certain genre right now at Amazon. So you can do a pre-order as well. And good evening, Jim and Dean. Right back at you, Sherry, as well. And we've had a lot of different people. Sue Prav was here. I guides. Yes, Jim guides by a question, but really lets Dean talk. Yeah, I like to let the guests talk, but I also like to interact with them. It's like a tennis match. We're bouncing off each other. It's not just me asking a question and the guest goes on and on. It's a sort of like a symbiotic relationship between me and the guest, because I see us on an equal playing field. Not I'm the host, they're the guest, and they have to follow me. It's an equal footing here at the Jim Masters Show, and with all of you as well. And I think this is great. Hey, Shelley Ray Speck watching. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Shelley Ray, she was a guest on our show as well. Fascinating interview. You enjoyed that. Thank you very much, Shelley Ray. Really appreciate that. She's a wonderful artist as well. And good stuff. So we love this. Thanks, everybody, for watching this episode. If you joined us late, you can see the entire episode on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. We once again thank very much a very, very talented guy, the wonderful Dean Butler, joining us here on the Jim Masters Show Live Entertainment Lifestyle Celebrity Talk Show Series. And check him out at deanbutler.com. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, give this episode a like. Click the like, thumbs up button. Give it a like. We appreciate your doing that. That helps us grow. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. We really appreciate that. Say thank you. When you do that, click the notification bell icon so you get alerts about all our guests. And leave a comment for us in the bottom of the screen underneath this episode. We appreciate it if you interact with us. Let us know who you're watching from. What do you like about our series, and who would you like to see on the show? Let us know. Interact with us by leaving a comment, a message underneath this episode in the comment section on our YouTube channel. So like, comment, and share, and all the rest. And for those of you who have been doing that, we say thank you very, very much. We also welcome all new viewers and subscribers and all the rest. Welcome to JMS, the Jim Masters Show. You're a part of a big family of people around the world who watch and love what we're doing. And some quietly watch, and some are very proactive and commenting during the show and after the show. And we say thank you very, very much. And Jason is here, Jason Bender. Thank you, everyone, for the greetings from Wisconsin, home of the Ingalls. Good to see you as well, Jason. We appreciate that. And good afternoon to you watching in Wisconsin, USA. He's a big fan of our series as well. All right, gang. Love you all. Let's show that book one more time. There it is. Look for that soon. And if you're watching this a year from now, then it's available. And we thank Dean Butler for joining us in this exclusive conversation on JMS. We love you all, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Jim Masters here. Thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, come see us again. Don't forget to love one another. Take care of one another. You know, that's very Little House on the Prairie, I guess, to say that. We've been saying it, I think, almost ever since I started our series, The Jim Masters Show. So it's very fitting that I would say it here on this episode, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Little House on the Prairie. Special guest, Dean Butler. Again, if you want to see the previous episodes where Charlotte Stewart was on our show, she was on the show twice, and Alison Arngrim was on the show. Nellie Olson and Karen Grassley was on the show, who played Ma. Good stuff. Yeah. And then Dean Butler here as well. All right. Yeah. And they're all fabulous actors and actresses on many other productions too, not just Little House on the Prairie. They've done so many other things in their careers, which I think is fantastic. All right. I'm going to go get an ice pop. I think that we have a popsicle waiting for me. I heard there's a nice red, white, and blue popsicle waiting. Sounds like it's something you'd have on Little House on the Prairie, right? Did they have popsicles back then? I think they just had ice cubes. And I don't even know how they froze. How'd they freeze them? They had freezer? We'll do a little digging. You guys are the best. Thank you, Kathleen, and everybody watching around the world. We always have a good time with all of you and hope you enjoyed it. We're going to wrap up here this episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series. We'll see you again soon. I'll keep the porch light on for you as well, right here at JMS. Be well, everybody. Take care, and cheers.